Hi there, it's Angie, and you're listening to Midlife Magic and Mayhem. The prospect of healing with psychedelic medicines and entheogens has been making mainstream news for a while now. In fact, my new home state of Colorado just passed a bill legalizing the personal use of psilocybin, otherwise known as magic mushrooms. There is a steady stream of research coming out proving the efficacy and usefulness of a lot of these medicines to help heal trauma and many other psychological issues. Probably the most well-known is the MAPS program, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. If you've ever been interested in this modality or are just really curious about the new flurry of attention directed at these molecules for the purpose of healing, this episode is for you. Please meet Jaia, or as some of her clients have called her, the archeologist of the subconscious. She has become an incredibly special person in my life with an absolutely incredible story. She is a truth teller and gifted healer who shoots straight with a gigantic heart. Anna's life mission is to help people remember who they are. Her spiritual path started in her early 20s after she moved from her homeland of Mexico to the U.S. to study music. Her mission became even clearer when she was summoned by the plant teachers to give her gift of service to communities in an even deeper way. Her education spans a wide range of modalities. In addition to being a certified life coach, her training includes sound healing, Reiki, pranic healing, shadow work, quantum healing, Psych K, just to name a few. Anna weaves decades of experiential education and curriculum development with the teachings of plant and earth allies in order to co-create the new Paradigm Mystery School. Within this context, she guides participants toward reconnecting to their ancestral roots and remembering their true calling. Anna's commitment to deep listening has led her down the path of teaching, helping people heal individually and in groups, and building a beautiful community in the mountains above Boulder, Colorado. She has most recently turned toward the profound responsibility of becoming an elder to her community. Here are just a few highlights from this very real, honest, and raw conversation. The reality of healing with entheogenic medicines, including my personal stories, being with big transitions, tapping into our own wisdom, identifying when magic sparks, our perspective of unconditional self-love, how science is catching up with what ancient intelligence has known for thousands of years, and her fascinating story of growing up in Mexico, leaving for the U.S. at 17 years old, marrying a rocket scientist, and how her path led to her current work. This woman is a treasure, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hello, Jaia.
Hi there.
Hey, welcome to the show, Midlife Magic and Mayhem. It is such an honor for you to be here.
Oh, thank you. Such an honor for me to be here.
Yes, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
So we have a really fun topic to talk about. And so I would love to start just with, a bit about you and your story and how you came to be. I met you earlier this year as part of a program. So I've known you for about 11 months now, and you have quickly become one of my very favorite humans. So it's so wonderful to have you in my life. And I just love for you to share a little bit about your story so that our listeners can get a good sense of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to be here and share this with you. And it's been a beautiful journey since you and I met. So it's been pretty amazing. My story. It's always hard to know where to begin my story, but I'll start with the fact that I was born in Mexico City, in a city of 20 million crazy people. Beautiful city full of culture, full of a lot of color and depth and beauty. And I grew up, it's an interesting way, the way that I grew up, because it's a very Catholic country. And my mom was not Catholic. And my parents got divorced when I was very young, when I was 5. And I guess it is an interesting part of the story because it helped formed me. The fact that even though a lot of my family was very Catholic, my mom believed that Jesus was pure love, and she did not really want us to go into organized religion. She wanted us to understand spirituality from a place of love. And so I did not exactly grow up the way a lot of Mexicans grow up, because my mom was very unique in that way. She was also an energy worker. She was like a closet witch. I mean, I don't know how to put it.
I love it. That's
And
fantastic.
witch in the best sense of the word. She knew how to use herbs, and she knew how to use her energy to heal us. So we grew up with something very different than a lot of people grow up with. So just having that as my background, for me, some things were normal that for a lot of people are not normal. Energy work and just healing with water. She would put her hands on a glass of water to energize it, to heal us if we had something wrong. So just in that, I think I had a background in energy and healing that a lot of people just didn't grow up with. I ended up being a very rebellious teenager, and through a lot of traumatic events. We were not exactly stable after my dad died when I was young. I mean, he didn't die, he left, sorry. He left to go to England. We were not stable at all. So we moved a lot. There were relationships, so attachment was very interesting. There's a lot of attachment wounding in there. And my mom got together with my stepdad, a man who became my stepdad, and he actually took his life when I was 14. And that was the beginning of a lot of changes in my life, because I felt like I had to be there for the family in a way that I wasn't quite ready for, because I was very young. And given that she and I found him dead, and she felt a lot of guilt and, like all the things you feel when a partner takes their life. At a young age, I had to take responsibility for the emotional well-being of the family. And I was only 14. So I grew up that day. And I took care of my sister's emotional well-being. I have two sisters, a younger sister and an older sister. And a year later, it was way more than I could handle, and I ran away from home. And in the running away from home, I had a lot of experiences that were, again, too old for the age I was, 15, 16. And at that point, my dad had moved from England to LA. And I had a very interesting event happen. And if people haven't experienced like real magic and serendipity, this would convince you that it exists, because I was 16 years old. I was hitchhiking in Mexico City, young girl, right? Hitchhiking. And I've always wanted to play the flute. I really, really wanted to become a musician. And in a previous visit to my dad to LA, he had bought me a flute. And I didn't know how to play it. I didn't know how to put it together even, but I had it. And it was one of the items I took with me when I left home. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was doing all kinds of drugs in a bad way. And there was some internal, I don't know if it's a guardian, a teacher, something very deep inside me was telling me that I was not going down that path. Not going to do drugs, not in that way. So I was in this place of, I don't want to go back home to my mom. There's a lot of trauma there. I don't want to stay with this guy because he's going down a path that I'm not aligned with. What do I do? So here I'm hitchhiking, and this man, sweet man, gives me a ride. And I look over and there's an instrument sitting between the seats. And I said, oh, is that a flute? And he said, yes, I am the first chair of the Mexico Philharmonic. So, talk about guardian angels and guides, just putting you in the right place at the right time. I could have been in the wrong car with the wrong man doing all the wrong things, right? A young girl, very vulnerable place. But instead, I was given this gift of this young man who was the first chair of the Philharmonic, and his father was the director of the Philharmonic. So instantly I asked him if he did lessons, and he said, yeah, of course I teach. Here's my card, call me. So way back then, I don't know if you remember the days in which we would write letters and put them in an envelope and put a stamp on the envelope and send them, and it would take a long time to get there, right?
What a concept. Yeah.
It feels like it's not that long ago.
I know.
Even where we are now with email and text and all of that, it's like so foreign. But it took 3 weeks for my dad to get a letter in which I asked to pay for flute lessons. And it took 3 weeks for my dad to send a letter back saying that, yes, he would pay for flute lessons, and he sent a check. And so I started taking lessons with this man. And I had, of course, in my running away from home, I also left school. So I was a high school dropout, you know, like prime material for going down really bad paths. But this man looked at me, and I think the second lesson, he said, so what is exactly your plan here? You're not in school, you're not living at home. Like, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a musician. And he looks at me and goes, well, you're too old for the conservatory. You're 16 already, which is kind of crazy that I'm too old for anything at that point. But yes, I was way too old to go into the conservatory. He's like, you're not getting in the conservatory in Mexico, and you're not in high school. Like, that's not a good plan here in Mexico. But wait, your dad lives in LA? Why don't you move to LA and go to college if your dad lives there? And it was like something opened up that I hadn't thought about. Like, oh, what a concept. There's an out for me. There's a way for me not to continue living this life on the streets of Mexico City with a boyfriend that was doing drugs. And I was, you know, smoking cannabis and doing things, but not in a very conscious way at all. So I wrote my dad another letter. And you probably remember the telegrams. Remember telegrams?
Yes. Totally.
He sent me a telegram with instructions of where to get my plane ticket. He had purchased a plane ticket for me at a travel agency, another thing that doesn't exist anymore. And so I went and picked up a plane ticket, and in a few months I was flying to LA. And I had a very interesting experience in that flight. I was 17 at this point. That's how long it took me to get it all together. But it's a 4.5-hour flight from Mexico City to Los Angeles. And that entire flight, I decided to recreate my life. I was like, in Spanish, we say borrón y cuenta nueva, which means, you know, erase everything and start brand new. I don't know if there's a saying like that in English, but like a clean slate. And I said, I could arrive and be anybody. I can change my name. Nobody knows me. So I don't have to be the person I was before. I can literally start brand new and be a brand new person, which I don't know a lot of people that have those thoughts at 17, but I completely recreated myself. And I said, you know, I didn't grow up with my dad. He barely knows me. So like, he wouldn't know that I'm different. Like, I could literally just show up as anyone I want to show up as. And I landed in LA, and my dad, who is, bless his heart, he had his own set of traumas, and he had been an alcoholic. He was in recovery at that point, so he was more sane, but still, you know, had his issues. He said, I bought you a bike at a yard sale down the street last week, and there's a college down the street, and here's $50. Go sign up to college. I didn't speak English. I didn't have high school diploma. My mom had given me a folder of important papers. That's all I had. So I grabbed this bike, and I'm riding down Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles, headed to Los Angeles Community College. Those of you from LA know exactly what it is. And I arrived there, and I pick up this application, and it's in English, of course. And it said, you're a resident. And I said, residente. Residencia means home. I have a home. Sure, my dad has a home. So yes, I had no idea that any of this had to do with legality, right? And I had minimal English, and it said, since when are you a resident? And I was like, well, my dad's lived here since 79. So his house is my house, right? So I wrote 1979, and they wanted a high school diploma. And I looked in a folder, and I had a junior high diploma, but of course it was in Spanish. So I get to the window and I give this lady my application. She took a look at it. She took my diploma, which was junior high, but she couldn't speak Spanish and I couldn't speak English. So she photocopied it, charged me $50, and I was in college.
So good.
Yeah. Don't try
So
this
good.
at home.
Right. Kids, do not try this at home. This is a
Right.
long time ago.
Yeah. Things like this do not really happen much. Or I think they created the I-9 form because of me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So I went to college, I learned English, I studied music, and then I transferred to a 4-year school. I went to Cal State Northridge and I got a degree in music. And eventually I figured out that I was an illegal alien once I spoke English.
Okay. Oh, by the way.
Yes, I became a little bit more aware of how the world actually works. Yeah, I saw a lawyer at the school who wanted me to either work for a company that could sponsor me, but I'm a flute player. I mean, it's not exactly a high, sought after position. So he said, you need to marry an American. That's like your only way to get citizenship. And I had very high values for a young woman at this point. I was like 19 or 20 or something. And I was like, I am not marrying for papers. I'm a good person. I'm a good citizen. There's no way I would ever do that. And I slammed the door. I was a little entitled. And then I was like, I don't know what to do. And then a law came into effect in LA, well, in the States, the amnesty law of 81. And I was able to apply through that and I got a work permit. And anyway, to make that very long story short, I ended up starting my process to residency through that. And then eventually I did a man I fell in love with and I got married and we moved to Virginia. And he's a rocket scientist, interestingly. Had a very interesting life in Virginia, which felt like an alien planet, given that I had lived in Mexico and LA. And had my kids there. And I had 2 children with my husband. And then 20 years later, I was still trying to figure out who I was because I had recreated myself and left my lineage. I left my culture. In not a great way. It was kind of like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And now I'm going to be this like American girl, which I'm not. I'm a Mexican girl. But, so it created a lot of internal, I don't know exactly how to put it, but there was definitely a lot of things that went into my shadow, especially about my culture, especially about the way that I was raised and the ways of my people. So we lived in a beautiful neighborhood in Great Falls, Virginia, and with a lot of people that did not feel anything like. I felt like I was just trying so hard to fit in, trying so hard and, trying to wear the right clothes and the right shoes to be accepted in this society of crazy Northern Virginia, DC metro area.
Yep.
So I never fit in and I tried hard, believe me. I did try. But I knew there was a lack of alignment within myself.
Yeah. Do you feel, I'm going to stop you here just for a second. Do you feel like that part of your story about being somewhere and not feeling like you fit in? I mean, you have a very clear and obvious reason for that, like born in Mexico City, like ran away, like, this whole so fascinating story. But like, I think there's so many of us in our own version, in our own ways, have also felt that way, like not feeling quite like you fit in, or just having to keep up some sort of show, wearing some sort of identity that in some ways doesn't quite fit. Right. And you can't really put a finger on it. Right. And then, so like you said, all that can go into your shadow. I mean, maybe, for whatever reason, we might all feel that way. So yeah, it's just fascinating.
Yeah. And given the work that I do now, I've tried really hard to put my finger on it. Yeah. Right. Because what I do now is I help people find their place of belonging within themselves and to remember who they are. Which is why the stories are amazing in that they really inform what we end up doing later in life very often.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people feel that way, even if they didn't come from a foreign country, because the way that society is and what they tell us to do or how to be is most often not aligned with our nature.
Correct.
And
totally
a lot of
agree.
And I grew up in Mexico City, which is not the outdoors. I did not grow up running around in a farm, laying in the grass and looking at the stars at night. I wish I had. And I think a lot of people do. But we grow up in this colonized society in which a lot of the things that our heart is calling us to do is seen as bad and wrong and not okay. And we need to fit into this molds of, you go to college and get married and have kids and, have this mainstream kind of life. And often our hearts want to be running around and be a little more wild and be able to be loud and be able to sing and be able to be opinionated and be able to be different. And so I would love to redefine the word normal.
Yeah.
Because normal is not necessarily the picket fence and 2.5 kids. And, normal is digging deep inside and figuring out who we really are and have the courage in a society that does not exactly encourage that to really figure out who is that person inside that wants so badly to express themselves.
Totally agree. And especially with redefining what normal is, because it isn't what society values, right? Our society doesn't necessarily put value on the heart's desires or that wildness of heart. It values fitting in, conformity, consumerism. That's what our culture values. And it's not pointing the finger at any one person or one set of people. It's just how this thing has developed over, thousands of years. I mean, it's just what's happened, right? There's no blame or fault. It's just how it's occurring. And so, at an individual level, I do think that's so accurate about redefining what that is for us. Like normal for me is what my own intuitive wisdom and my wild heart says is normal, right? Like, who gives a shit what's normal or not? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, everybody has a different definition of normal. I mean,
yeah, but what there is to understand, it's easy to say who gives a shit about it. And you and I don't, because I think we've gotten to a point where we see the value in really truly being ourselves. A lot of people don't have the tools to actually get themselves out of the mold. And they don't know how to give themselves permission in a society that is going to look at them like, oh, you're painting outside the line, you're walking out of the mold, and you're weird. Well, for me, weird is normal.
Right.
But for most people, weird is not normal. Right?
I love it. That's a great point. Yeah. I can see that. I mean, I've had that in my own life. Right. Like this clawing, just, something happening in me and looking around at my life and going, I have no idea what to do about this. Like, oh my God. So you're in Virginia, you're raising your kids, married to literally a rocket scientist, which I love that part of the story, literally a rocket scientist. And so pick up from there. So how is life going from there?
So, we had our ups and downs. He's a great man and a great dad and climbing the corporate ladder. So he's going up that route of the corporate ladder and working really hard in the mainstream in a classified job. I didn't even know what he did, which has had its own strange things about it. And here I am going down a path of like, who am I really? And I created a language academy. I thought it was crazy that kids in elementary school were not learning Spanish or any other languages. They waited until high school. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm going to solve the monolingualism problem of this country. And I set out to create a language academy. I couldn't do it alone. I created a beautiful curriculum because the part of the story I didn't tell is that I had a lot of learning differences that we now call neurodiversity growing up. I refuse to call them learning disabilities, because I just learned in very unique ways. And I think a lot of kids, most people learn in unique ways. So I think we're all neurodiverse. Why wouldn't we be? Right? Like, who said that our brains should all work the same way and be able to sit in a classroom for hours on end with somebody in front of a blackboard? Like, that's crazy. But anyway, so I created a language academy using the multiple intelligences to learn languages. And I had contracts with the public schools, and we would go in before school and after school and taught kids how to learn languages through play and music. As a musician, also, I brought in a lot. I wove music with languages and had a great time. But I knew that that was also not necessarily like my thing. I had tried a lot of things. I'd become a childbirth educator. When my kids were born, I was like, oh, natural childbirth, this is amazing. This is how every woman should know how to give birth. We have like this inner wisdom. So I became a childbirth educator. And as my kids got older and went into Montessori school, oh, education in this way. So I went into that, so I tried it all. Trying to find like, what is my thing? I have this uniqueness inside me and I need to uncover it. So eventually, when my kids were in high school, my ex-husband and I realized that we were just not on the same path anymore. You get to a point in life where once kids start getting really independent and leaving and having their own lives, you have no choice but to look inside and go, who have I become and who of me have I left behind? And
so good.
That was a very interesting inquiry for me. And we decided to, and I'm going to be careful the language here for a reason. We decided to transition our marriage into a friendship. Coming from a non-dual place of like, we're really not separate. I was very careful to tell my kids that it's not, we're separating and we're getting divorced. And we did get divorced. But I was very conscious of how I wanted to do this in a way that the kids understood that we all grow and transition. And sometimes you grow closer to your partner in the last third of your life, once the kids are gone and you've gone through all of this, and there's like an alignment in your path. And that's really beautiful. And for other people, the growth and what you need to continue your spiritual path, which for me is important, is to go on your way. And my ex-husband, my now former husband, was surprised when I brought it up, but it was really not that surprising. I mean, we had issues our whole marriage. I came from a very, very difficult background, had a lot of trauma. I didn't have the tools to work through. I think he's a saint to have put up with me for 20 years. Because it was very healing for me. He had a stability I had never seen before. But I was not easy. I was not easy as a wife. I was not easy as a mother early on. I had a lot to learn on my path. So I would erect a monument for that man, because he really put up with a lot. And eventually it was just not good for either of us to stay together. And I said that to him, look, if I really believe that the universe wouldn't have it that taking on our own paths would be good for me, but not for him. Like, how could it be that it's good for you to stay inside a marriage, but not for me? I'm like, it doesn't work that way. This is probably not working for both of us. I just got there first. And I said to him, probably in about 2 years, you're going to realize how much healthier you are without me and how much happier you are. And 2 years later, when we were taking one of our kids to college, we came to Colorado actually. And we went to that, the introduction weekend, parents weekend.
Yeah.
And he took me out to dinner and he said, you're right. I am much happier. And I see how, I am much healthier without being in that very codependent, weird dynamic that we had created, a lot of tension. So that was an interesting part of the path, just because there was something inside me that was like, there's a level of consciousness that we need to bring into even separating.
That's so beautiful, because what you said, there's such a maturity there in being able to I don't know if trust is the right word, or tap into that larger wisdom of this has to be for both of us.
Mhm.
Like, it might not look like it. It might not feel like it in this moment. And this actually has to be for both of us, or it wouldn't occur, right?
Yeah. And we're family, and we're always going to be family. We had two
Yeah.
children, and we're committed to the well-being of this thing called family. And family doesn't have to look like male, female living together with kids in the same roof. And if
Mhm.
the kids go, and then, you're happily ever after inside a white picket fence. A
Yeah.
family could be really a lot of things.
Mm.
And we still consider each other family. He just invited me to his Christmas party next Saturday,
Yeah.
and
I
been
love it.
divorced for 10 years.
Yeah.
So there was a wisdom inside me that every now and then I would tap into and go like, wow, she's pretty cool, whoever that is.
Let's keep her around. Let's develop her. Let's bring her out to the party.
Yeah, I kind of like her. And so when I did start going my own way, I was also teaching music at the Montessori school, at several Montessori schools in Northern Virginia. I started getting the message. Every time I would walk in the classroom, I would hear the words, start saying goodbye to these kids. And I'd be like, where am I going? What's happening? And, I didn't necessarily have an answer then, but I was open. I was like, something is shifting in my life. And for some people that might be listening that have gone through like the dark night of the soul, they know that typically when one thing goes, like everything goes, right? Like, it's not like things shift slowly over time, one little thing in your life. Sometimes everything blows up, right? So my marriage, needed to transition into something else. I left the Montessori school. I sold the language academy, and I was like, what's left? Who of me did I leave behind that I need to reclaim? And I'm going through this process, and a lot of trainings started appearing in front of me. Reiki and pranic healing and past life regression therapy. I ended up moving to Hawaii for 4 months and did a lot of my healing work. And then I came back to Virginia, and I trained as a life coach. And that was the beginning of like, oh, okay, I do have something to provide the world. I can turn all of my trauma and all of the things that I went through into this beautiful wisdom that can help me help others find their way and find their belonging within themselves and remembering who they truly are. And 2012, December 21st, 2012, when the Mayan calendar ends a cycle and starts a new cycle, I'm literally at the top of a pyramid in the Yucatan. And I'm doing this prayer because this calendar is ending and the Mayans are celebrating. And my family from my dad's side comes from Yucatan, so I have a lot of history there. So this was a really beautiful event. And I heard the words, reclaim your lineage and deal with your shadow. And at that point, I didn't really know what the shadow was. I hadn't really done, I had been in music and Spanish
Right.
shadow. Okay, what is that, right? And I came back and somebody gave me a book on shadow work. And I started realizing that a lot of my lineage, I had built a brick wall between me and my lineage because I had to survive as a young girl in LA without English, without all of this. I had to create a protector from all of the trauma. So there was a wall between me and my trauma so that I could like have this life. But then, of course, it catches up to you, the things that you don't deal with, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Sure
Yeah.
does. No one escapes.
No. So I read this book and I realized, oh my goodness, half of me or more than half of me is in my shadow. So much of me, my lineage, the place where I come from, the ways of my people, the wisdom of my people, it's all behind this brick wall I built.
Mm.
So then, then the path to take these bricks one at a time and deal with all of these things and heal myself really started. So the past 10 years have been the most amazing healing path and reclaiming of myself and my roots and the wisdom of my people. That is so beautiful. And the wisdom of my mother.
Mm.
And the things that she was teaching us about who we truly are. So that's that's been the last 10 years. And then, are you ready for the next chapter?
Yes. Very much.
So the next chapter is interesting because growing up when we did with the drug and war, the war on drugs.
Yeah.
And all of that, there was, and my experience with my boyfriend doing drugs, there was no way that I was going to do drugs because they mess with your brain. That was one part of my brain saying that. Another part of me was saying, there is a lot of wisdom and healing in plant medicine. And I started hearing about ayahuasca and I started looking for it. And I started finding out that people were holding ceremony with ayahuasca and none of them felt quite right. And my cousins in Mexico were inviting me to some ceremonies. And then eventually I had my first ayahuasca ceremony. I thought I was going to go to Peru. At this point, I saw myself as a healer. I was doing Reiki and pranic healing and all this, and life coaching. And I thought I was going to go to Peru and do it with the right shaman in Peru, right? This Mexican healer reclaiming her roots. I need to have a shamanic experience. It wasn't quite that way. I was led to go to the East Coast and sit with a person there who was holding that space. And it was really beautiful. And in my very, very first ceremony, there was something so familiar in that space. It was like my bones knew that altered state and the places where that medicine takes you. It was like, I know this deep in my bones. Like, I know this. So I worked with that medicine for a couple of years and hosted some spaces with that medicine and learned so much and did a good part of my healing through that medicine. And then things started really coming together to where I realized that all the training that I had done, everything, music, childbirth education, languages, all of this was coming together, and life coaching, of course, all the skills that I learned through coaching and Reiki and pranic healing, energy work, sound healing, all of this were coming together to look into the healing potential of entheogens, which are basically plant and lab medicines that can change our consciousness. And all of that is, a lot more in the open now, especially since Michael Pollan's book, You Can Change Your Mind. People are realizing that there were a lot of studies that were being done in the late 50s and 60s with mushrooms and LSD as far as the psychological healing that can happen with those medicines. And then that was put aside. I won't get into the politics of all of that, but it was put aside until, several years ago when that got restarted, and a lot of places in the world that has been restarted. There's a lot of scientific studies. What's interesting is that a lot of the science is now catching up with what shamans have known.
Yes.
For a very long time. So it's not new knowledge. It's not like, oh, we're discovering that this is healing. It's like, oh, we're actually confirming what shamans have known.
Exactly. I mean, I feel that way so much. I mean, it's like in so many different areas, I feel like, science just catching up with, oh, wait, this is why meditation works. Oh, wait, this is why yoga works. Oh, wait, this is why Ayurveda works. Like these practices that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Same thing with plant medicines, right? And these entheogens, like you're speaking to, science is like, oh, wait, oh yeah, this is how this works. This is why it works. These are the benefits. These are, so it is, I think it is, I love to see that. I love to see science catching up to the natural wisdom
Mm.
of humans and the planet and the plants and the animals and everything that has been existing for millions of years. And then science is like, oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it
and I
works.
don't want to minimize it because
Yeah,
science has given us a lot of really good wisdom
of
around it.
course. Yeah.
It has helped us determine contraindications with different
Mhm.
medications. And, you know, we live in a very pharmaceutical society, and a lot of
Yeah.
people take pharmaceuticals. And
Mhm.
so it is really good that science is actually going in and saying, okay, this doesn't interact well with this. And so
Yes.
be really careful when you want to do your healing work, and you're going to go in with whether it's plants or lab created medicine like MDMA,
Mhm.
the ketamine, you know, to know what the interactions are so that we could do it safely.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
So it is a very interesting world we live in. A lot of mainstream people that would have, you know, like me, been like, never, I would never do, you know, a drug.
Mhm.
Now they're entheogens. Now there's something that I have been able to heal so much of myself with, and I'm helping others heal with. Um, it's a very different thing, right?
Yeah.
Some people ask me, especially about MDMA, and they're like, well, isn't that Molly? Isn't that what the kids are doing out there? I'm like, yes. And, you know, when you get it out in the street, it could be laced with all kinds of things, and people are not doing it in a safe container. It is a completely different experience. It's almost like a whole different molecule when you do it
Mm.
in a rave, in a party, or when you do it in a container. Set and setting, as we know, is super important, and having someone hold the space for you that is prepared for what might come up.
Mm.
And that's important because as things are being legalized in more states, and there's freer access, I think a lot of people are really happy to have access to these medicines. And the plant and earth medicines have a lineage, and the lineage, the wisdom that comes with that lineage is very important in the healing process, in the ceremony, the ritual, and the healing process. So I don't think it's a great idea for, you know, people that go to ayahuasca 2 or 3 times, and then they say the medicine told me to be a shaman, and then they go start holding space without, this is really happening.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, without really studying the lineage and being rooted in their own ancestral wisdom. So I think in the plant and earth medicines that can be dangerous. Psilocybin is interesting because it grows easily in a lot of different continents, and a lot of, you know, people can grow them at home.
Mhm.
They do have a lineage. A lot of people know about Maria Sabina. Some people don't know who she is. She's a Mazatec woman from Oaxaca who basically, well, someone went to her in the 60s. And although she requested that her ceremony and her medicine does not get out into the world, he came back and he wrote an article that was in Time magazine. And then, you know, everybody started going to Oaxaca and doing mushrooms. And then, so they have become known, but they also have a lineage. And there is a way to do this medicine with a reverence of where the medicine comes from that I find a very important part of the healing path. You know, we live in societies that have been colonized. My country was colonized by the Spanish for 500 years. This country, the indigenous wisdom was also colonized.
Yep.
And so I think part of the repair of the colonization is to start really honoring the wisdom and the lineage that comes with this medicines. The spirit of the medicine has a lineage, and when we don't honor that, we're colonizing again and again. So we're the cultural trauma that gets created, it's furthered.
Mm.
Not doing this medicines with that reverence.
Mhm. Yeah, I do think that is so important. Excuse me, because these are not medicines to play around with. I mean, obviously people do them recreationally all the time and have been doing them recreationally for many, many years. And I do think having, again, these are powerful medicines, and they carry a lot of power.
Mhm.
So having someone who has been with the wisdom of the medicine as a guide and can create the space, create the container, create the set and setting, hold the wisdom, bring in the ritual, bring in the ceremony, makes such a tremendous difference and can provide so much healing, like you've been speaking to, and so much benefit that, we're just, in some ways really starting to understand that part of it, right? Like you were saying before, the science is producing what it's producing, and it's wonderful. And thank goodness that we have that for all those reasons that you mentioned. And what I love seeing people like you bringing forward into the conversation as well is the natural wisdom and the indigenous beauty and power that these medicines hold, and to not forget that piece and to not leave that piece behind, because that's how they came to be, right?
Yeah, and it's a multi-pronged situation there, because I personally think that when you bring that into a ceremony, it definitely enhances the personal healing for the person that came to, as the patient or the client.
Yes.
Right. So it's definitely more powerful. The other situation that happens, especially here in this country was created by people that came from a different continent and colonized what is now the United States. And a lot of the indigenous wisdom was, put aside, to put it nicely.
Yeah.
Use way more powerful words,
Mhm.
genocide, and, a lot of the things that happened. A lot of, what are known as the white people are actually looking for their roots. They
Yes.
feel like there's an emptiness inside, like, where do I come from? And they're looking for the depth. They're looking for the wisdom. And for a lot of people, it could be many generations back, whether you're from Germany or from England or Ireland, or, any of those countries in Europe. A lot of people came here from there. They're looking for something that seems missing. So it's very easy to grab onto something that feels like that, which is a lot of the indigenous wisdom. Someone from Mexico, South America, we are closer to our roots in a lot of ways, and we can provide that depth that people are holding on to. So then people go try to find their depth through other cultures. And what is cultural appropriation gets created, and they feel so connected. And they're like, oh, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to Peru. I'm going to go to all these places to do this medicine. Costa Rica, a lot of people are going down to Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, Ecuador to do this medicines, which is great. And something that a lot of people are not realizing is that their depth, what they're looking for, is not only not really going to be found through somebody else's culture. People need to do their own work at reclaiming their own lineage, and that's where the real healing is. Sometimes it's through the door of another culture, but you go to circles, especially here in Boulder, right? And everybody says aho, and everybody says words that are just the word that you say. And sometimes I wonder, do we know where that word comes from? Have we sat with the Lakota people? Have we sat in teepee? Do we understand the energetics behind that word? Or are we saying it because it's like the cool thing to say, to be, aligned with, like, oh, now we're honoring the indigenous, so we say their word. So that's a very big topic that I'm learning a lot about right now. I cannot say that I'm an expert in that topic, because I'm in the process of reclaiming my own lineage. And I do want to help people reclaim their own lineage, wherever that is from.
Right.
And I'm understanding that the more we take from these medicines without honoring the lineage, the more we build in these lands without honoring the people that walk through these lands before we basically kick them out.
Right.
we're furthering the colonization. And so, when you're mentioning the ritual and in the ceremony, I think that it is both for the healing of the client and also for the communal healing, cultural healing of the colonization that has happened in our continent. So that's why I see it as when we're really honoring, we're doing a lot of things. So it's personal and also for the society. How do we heal the society from the colonized ways? And what we were talking at the beginning, a lot of people feel a lack of belonging and a lack of like fitting in. When we start just honoring, I come from a lineage, even if it's many generations back, and even if the past 4 or 5 generations were not amazing people and I don't connect with, somewhere back there's indigenous wisdom. We all come from indigenous wisdom from somewhere way back. We're all indigenous from somewhere.
Right. Beautiful.
There's wisdom in that. There's beautiful wisdom.
It's such a beautiful way of saying that. Even like right now, I've just started down doing some ancestral work, exactly what you're talking about, with someone here locally, and it's blowing my mind. That's a whole other different conversation. But I just wanted to add that in, like it really is powerful. And I had no idea. So it's so beautiful that you're bringing that up, and bringing it in. And I'd also like to ask, when people are coming to you, they find you, however they find you, and they come to you and they want to work with you. I'm sure it's all over the place, but what would be something that someone would say, hey, Anna, this is what I've got going on. I think this might be helpful. Ceremony, plant medicine, this thing. What does that look like? Like, what do people come to you for?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is all over the map. And I should just mention that, interestingly, in the past 2 years, a lot of my friends from Virginia, from that life, have called me or, found me somehow and say, I've been hearing about this plant medicine stuff. Do you know anything about that? I'm like, well, here's what I'm doing now. And they're like, oh, I'm so not surprised. It's so funny that people saw that in me way back before I saw it for myself. And people are like, oh, I immediately thought about you. So what are people looking for? There's a set of people that read Michael Pollan's book and are very curious.
Right.
And so some people come out of curiosity. A lot of people come out of, I'm in my middle ages. My kids are gone and I'm still stuck. I don't know what my life is about. I'm trying to find myself. A lot of people have childhood trauma that is now emerging, like mine did. I'm feeling stuck. Especially the last 2 years with the pandemic, people have lost their joy and their hope.
Yeah.
And they're like, where is my joy? Where is the hope? I don't even know what my life mission is. I don't even know if I have a life mission. So I'm trying to, in one way or another, is the way that I summarized it, is people are trying to find themselves, and it's going to show up in many different ways. Right. I am feeling stuck. I am very depressed. I have a lot of anxiety. That's for the symptoms that lead to, people are really in need of releasing a lot of the blocks and releasing a lot of the thoughts that society has put upon us all to be in certain ways that are not aligned with who we are. Right. So, yeah, we have anxiety, we have depression like crazy. So anxiety and depression, I would say, are the two main symptoms. And
and I love how you presented it, or the way I heard it was, there are all these things are sort of quote unquote symptoms, right? It could be, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, like a career transition, relationship transitions, like I don't know who I am. I don't know who my partner is. I don't know if I want this partner. I don't know if I want a partner at all. I don't know if I want that sex of a partner. Like, it could be all sorts of things. And depression, anxiety, stuckness, like all of these things present as this is what I'm here for. But then it's the several layers underneath all of that is what's actually bubbling and brewing and stewing. And that's where the healing takes place. And I can't remember if it was in the Michael Pollan book that we're referencing here, and I'll link it in the show notes, is How to Change Your Mind. And there's also a Netflix special based on the book with Michael Pollan in it. So I've seen it. I recommend it. It's a great starting place for people, and I'll link that too. But it really is kind of going underneath. And I think it was maybe in the book that, or somewhere else that I read, that people say, like, I have done a ceremony or a series of ceremonies, and it was like 15 years of therapy. Like these, and especially with someone who is a guide who can be there with you and knows this territory, right? That's such the important part. And because it opens the mind in a way that that nothing else does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been told that several times. I just did 10 years of therapy in one night.
Yep.
And I need to say this, and I will say it a couple of times because this is super important. Because people are reading a lot of what's out there on psychedelics and the Michael Pollan book and the Netflix shows. There's a ton of stuff on Netflix and out there. People are expecting a one and done.
Yeah.
People think that they could go into ceremony and heal all their trauma in one night. And yes, you could do about 10 years of therapy in one night, but it takes a lot of integration.
Yes.
So, especially with people our age, I'm in my 50s.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We've been around the block a couple times.
There's some sludge in there. Takes more than just one hit. It'd be nice.
Yeah. So I really, really want people to know that this is the healing journey is a journey.
Yeah.
If you're looking for peak experience, go to Disneyland.
Totally. And I thought, someone, and we were in this group that we were in, one of the facilitators said, look, peak experience without integration can also cause its own trauma.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. Integration is so important.
There is ceremony-induced trauma.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it exists. And so, especially as I was saying, with people our age or older, because I have sat with people that are in their 70s and 80s that had never done anything like this. It will take some work. For me, the medicine itself, and when I say medicine, I'm referring to the entheogens, MDMA, psilocybin, ketamine. To me, it's like GPS. When you grab your phone and you put in where you want to go, the GPS shows you the map. But you have to get in the car and you have to put in the ignition and you have to sit yourself there and you have to drive there yourself and make all the turns and stop at all the lights, and you have to do all that. So the medicine is your GPS. It shows you where you need to go. And yes, it'll help you heal some things, but you have to do the work. And so anybody that thinks I'm going to go do a mushroom journey and my life is going to be so much better, good luck with that. Some 20-something might be able to do that. They don't have a lot of baggage quite yet. And for a lot of them, their life changes. And you know what? Life does change. So I also don't want to minimize it. Your life can definitely change. There's life before medicine, life after medicine, for sure. And but waking up and living a conscious life is also not easy.
It's so true. And there's a lot of different avenues and angles too, and layers to all this that we would call the healing journey, right? You and I are both coaches. You do medicine work. And there are so many layers. And even in my own experience, a lot of the work that I've done over the past, growth work that I've done over the past, 10, 20 years was such a great foundation for entering a new space, for looking at this healing prospect from this other angle. And not that it has to be that way. I don't want to scare people off and be like, if you haven't done 20 years of personal growth work, you shouldn't do this. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just different angles and different layers. And, if someone is interested in exploring this avenue, like you said, it's not necessarily a one shot, one and done. And all of a sudden, the angels are singing and it's a miracle. Not that won't happen, right? It could. I know my own experience, my life is different. My way of seeing and my way of being, and it's still unfolding. And I think that's what we can speak to as well. Yes, you might have an experience with one of these medicines, and for me, there's a long tail to this work. I still can have an insight or a memory or something that takes me back into that space that I'm like, aha. Oh, okay. That makes sense now. And finding different places in myself that, either need healing, not need healing, but that, how do I want to say that? Other different aspects of myself that have come to light that I can just be with now in a different way and not judge it and not condemn it and not think I need to just get it out. Right. It's more about integration. Oh, hello, you again. Aw,
Yeah. And there's a lot of people are like, I need to get rid of this part of me.
Yeah.
Well, that right there causes more of an issue. It's
right.
about really learning all of the parts of us, why they are there. A lot of our protectors show up because it was an important time in our life. I know that if I hadn't built that wall, I wouldn't have survived in a different country at 17, not speaking the language, right? Coming from all the trauma that I came from. So understanding all of these things that are now slowing us down or keeping us small are there for a reason. And we need to address them with so much care and respect and love, and really go into that healing with compassion for us. And, self-love it's interesting to watch how a lot of people don't really even understand self-love. How do I get there? And I need to get rid of this part of me, and I need to get rid of that part of me, and I need to not be this way, and this wrong with me, and I'm broken. So when you watch the way we talk about ourselves, how could we possibly get to self-love? And
and self-love is a term that is so kind of thrown, in my opinion, is kind of thrown around a lot. You could see it on the cover of a magazine in the grocery store, self-love, flower crown, self-love, and that's all great.
Self-love.
Yeah, it's 7 steps, 12 steps, 8 steps, self-love in 5 minutes. And, and I intellectually had an idea of what that was. Again, speaking from my own experience. And then after having experience with a couple of these medicines, I have a whole different relationship to that now. Not to say that it's complete, still a work in progress, but an entirely new eyes to see it from a different place, and a new depth of what the possibility is that it actually means, what unconditional self-love really means, and how deep that goes. And not only, and you were even mentioning this earlier with the personal and then the collective, right? Not only at a personal level, because it may start with personal self-love and then expands to the self of the collective. It starts with you, and then it just expands and turns into something really beautiful and that really isn't even language for until you have the experience.
Right. Yeah. And the experience can, as you said, can change everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a cool concept to have in the head. Oh, so I love it.
Yeah.
And like even affirmations, right? If you say affirmations every day to love yourself, well, does that go deep enough? I remember when I started coaching, my clients started calling me the archeologist of the subconscious.
That should be your tagline.
Yes, the archeologist of the subconscious, because there's always so much material way deeper. Way deeper. Yeah, the self-love thing, it's another, to me, is, I mean, that's a pretty deep one. But to go back to the question, why do people come to me? Sometimes it is self-love, sometimes it is I feel stuck, sometimes it is I feel anxiety, depression, all of that. And I look at it all, it's beautiful symptoms of let's go deeper.
Yes, exactly. And I think, and and I was one of those people that was like, I don't do drugs. I'm not like, what? No. And then when I could see it from a different perspective, when I could see it from a perspective of this is me going to places in myself that, and it needs to happen, right? Like if I'm going to live in this world in the way that I want to be in it, and have the depth and the richness and the texture that I want to infuse into how I feel at any given moment. And granted, I mean, shit's gonna happen, and you're gonna, fall back into whatever, and you're gonna have disagreements and things, and life happens. And at the same time, like this life is meant to be, for me, from my perspective, meant to be lived. And I want to see all of it, and I want to feel all of it and hear all of it at the most that can be felt, and understand how it all fits together. And so that can happen at an intellectual level, right? Knowledge, study, research, great. But there's other levels that we can't access necessarily. Maybe we can't, but that these processes can help to access. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Right? There's nothing wrong with it.
No, actually, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Want to live a rich life. And a minute ago, we were saying how hard the path can be, but I want to make sure to also mention how much more fulfilling it is.
Oh, completely.
And, it's almost like saying, I'm going to walk through life having a backpack and keep adding rocks to this backpack, and just keep walking and adding rocks to this backpack, right? And it's getting heavier, and I'm kind of getting a little crooked because this backpack is so heavy, and then my bones are getting tired. And there are some tools. There's always been tools for us, healing tools. And some people go to therapy, and you could take some of the rocks out slowly, or you could do something that could have you look at all these rocks and know why they're there, and be able to take them out consciously in a way that it lightens your load. And then all of a sudden you could play in life again. Once you drop the backpack, you could hike to the top of the mountain. You could do so many more things when we're free from those things. So, we were given a lot of messages about drugs, and they are drugs.
Yep.
I'm going to say they're not. And done properly and carefully. And this is where science comes in, because a lot of people are not going to go into an experience without knowing that scientifically it's been proven to be safe. So it's really beautiful that MAPS is doing their studies, and there's a lot of things out there that show us that this is safe.
Definitely.
I saw it the other day that showed all the different mind-altering substances, and you might be, maybe you wouldn't be surprised what the most dangerous one of them all is.
Alcohol.
The one that
100%.
Right? The one that is legal And the one that everybody drinks and doesn't think about it is actually the most dangerous one. Somebody can rape somebody or kill somebody and not remember the next day.
Yep.
Things that can happen with alcohol. And of course, nobody gets that. Not everybody gets that drunk, obviously.
Sure.
People drink it more consciously and socially in, environments in which it's safe to do. So I don't want to make it seem like it's just horrible all along. I like my glass of wine every now and then too. But it is the most dangerous of all the substances. And it's interesting that the narrative that we've been given is that all these other ones, the ones that can actually wake us up, the ones that can actually heal us, we were told that we could stay on the trip and we could never come back, or like these things happen to our brain. And if you combine them with a lot of other substances and you do it not consciously, they can be dangerous. Let's not play around. They can definitely be dangerous. Alcohol and all of them. Anything you could driving your car not safely can be very dangerous, right? Like a lot of consciously can be dangerous. But done well, it can definitely lighten your load and change your life. Your sex life can improve, your intimacy can improve, your relationships in general can improve, the way that you see the world. You could find your life mission. There's so many things, and why wouldn't we? Here, a lot of us have, and I think a lot of your audience is people in their middle part of their life, right? Yep. The last third of our life. Why wouldn't we want to? We worked our asses off. Here we are. A lot of us have had families and kids and gone through potentially, marriages and divorces, or wherever we are, even if you're in the same relationship. Why wouldn't you want to make it the best that you could make it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. I mean, and even in my own journey, I mean, so much of my own healing has come from, we all have our history and we all have our experiences. And I will say that the experiences that I have had, there haven't been that many, but the ones that I have had with medicine have only enhanced and reaped benefit for myself, my relationship to others, my relationship to life, my relationship to my own body, like in every single way that I can point to has only benefited. And again, that's my experience, not to say that it hasn't been at sometimes hard work, right? But work that I can't imagine not doing, because the other side of it is so good. And again, it's not necessarily complete. All right. Like it's always a work in progress, mountain with no top, but I always doing the climb. But I just, I see tremendous benefit done in the proper channels, in the proper, whatever that means, like with care, with safety and care, in a good container, set and setting guide.
Yeah. I love the mountain with no top. I was thinking earlier that there isn't a place to get to.
Exactly.
There isn't a place to get to. It's just this beautiful path. And when you approach it that way, like I am just going to, further my level of consciousness, live happier, be way more fulfilled in life. And there isn't like oh, now I'm enlightened.
Totally. Thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no point on the dial. There's no finish line that we're running to. It's not linear. Right. These things that we're talking about are not linear.
Right. And that being said, there definitely is a way to feel a much deeper love, a much deeper inner peace. When my kids were growing up, I was an angry, frustrated mom. I yelled a lot. And now I don't really get angry anymore. I mean, I have an inner peace that I could get sad, and I love the rainbow color of emotions that a human experiences, and I don't avoid them. When I'm sad, I'm really sad, and I allow myself to fully go there. And when I'm happy or joyful, I fully go there too. But there's a lot of things that are just not part of my experience as they used to be, because I have healed a lot of those things. And so frustration, anger, a lot of those things are I just don't go there.
Yeah. Well, and if they arise, then there's not the same charge. There's not the same attachment. It's like anger may arise, frustration may arise, sadness may arise. And with doing a lot of this work, it's like you can see it and be with it and feel it fully and not attached to it.
Right. The difference is that it goes from a place of there's a time in our life where those emotions have you. It has you. Frustration has you, and it has its way with you. And when you do a lot of healing work, you can have anger.
Yeah.
And you can have frustration, but you're having it. It's not having you.
Beautiful.
And it changes everything.
I think that's a wonderful place to wrap. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for days and days on end. I adore you. Thank you so much for this conversation. It just is, I think it's so important right now. And it's a different place to look, right? I think a lot of people our age, a lot of women our age, might not know about any of these accesses, medicines, ceremonies, journeys. And if they do, they might have thoughts about them or prejudices or judgment or whatever. So, really the point of this conversation is just to open a window of possibility, not to say anything's right, wrong, anything at all. It's just opening a window of possibility and have curiosity about life and about what's possible and how to get there and what if. And so thank you so much for being here and the way that you are and how you show up and the love that you bring. And I am so grateful to have you in my life.
Well, thank you. I adore you too. And thank you for doing this. I think you're doing a great service to the community and to women our age. And I love the fact that you mentioned curiosity. I think curiosity is a cure for a lot of things.
Yes. Agreed.
We'll stay curious. I love you. Thank you for doing this. And
thank you.
We'll continue on this path.
We will. And if anyone is interested in speaking with you directly, you can either contact me, and I'll have all the places and show notes of how to contact me. And how can people contact you?
My email address is Anna, A-N-A, with one N, A-N-A, at thewellofwellbeing.com. You could contact me email, and I do retreats. I take people to Mexico and beautiful places to do a lot of self-discovery, shadow work, and work with medicine. So it's beautiful to get out of like our own place and go do healing work up at the top of a mountain or in a cenote in the Yucatan or somewhere.
Yeah, sometimes I do think immersion experiences are really beneficial to like really steep in what's happening without the distraction of daily life. Yeah. Well, Anna, thank you again so much, dear.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I will see you soon.
Hey, blessings.
Thank you. Bye. I hope you gained a different perspective and maybe even possibility from this conversation with Anna Jaia. I know we talked about some possibly taboo topics here, and things aren't always what they seem. If you're at all interested in what we talked about and would like to explore maybe even one-on-one work with Anna for yourself, please contact me, or you can email Anna Jaia, and I have linked her email in the show notes. And as always, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you also want to see these conversations, and share with your friends, and follow me, Angie.bird, on Instagram. This will help the show gain momentum and our sisters out there who are also looking to bring in some magic and mayhem into their lives as well. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.